The last time I rode my Gamma, a rock came up and hit my fork tube and caused, with this ding in it, nasty ding. It was much bigger than this, and it caused the fork seal to leak because when the rock originally hit it, it had all sharp edges and everything. Sliced the fork seal and made it leak. So these fork tubes are in LA, can't buy them anymore. And besides, you don't need to buy a whole new fork tube just because of one ding. One thing I've done on several bikes in the past with these same problems is I get some really fine emery paper and just smooth it out. And you can still see there's a little bit, but you could spend the rest of your life. To get rid of that totally ding, I'd have to take out all of the metal and get it so far down in there, then the fork seal wouldn't have anything to grip and it would just leak. It's okay to have a little visible remark. My fingernail can't feel it. It's okay, so I'm putting the forks together now. And what I have learned is that these RG500 forks have got a couple of things that are weird. I've never seen on any other forks that I've worked on any other bike. So I'm making this video so other Gamma owners can put their forks together correctly. So starting at the bottom, you've got here's the bolt that holds the damper rod in, and there's this little weird little hat-shaped piece, and it's got these 3 washers that go on the hat-shaped piece. And what's weird about those 3 washers is 2 of them are flat, 2 of them are wavy, 1 is flat. You have to have the wavy washers sandwiching the flat washer when you put it together. Okay? And the next thing that can cause trouble is up here on the damper rod, there's this top hat spring, and it has to go on the bottom of the damper rod. And it's possible to take these forks apart, and then when you're putting them back together again, put the damper rod in, and then have a little spring and put it on top, and then your forks are extended permanently. You have to take it all apart again. That's not good. So make sure the spring goes on the damper rod. And then here's I've got an emulator. If you don't have an emulator, you're just going to have a little longer spring. Boom, 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 boom. And then at the top of the spring, you've got a little hat-shaped washer and a spacer and a seal. And then here's a bushing. That's normal. And then what's the trick is here we've got the seal, and it's got a washer above it and below it. And that's kind of weird to start with. Okay, so you want, what's really weird about these washers is they don't have the same ID. One of them has a larger inside diameter than the other. So that means one of them has to go under the seal and the other goes above it. The way I figure it is the one with the small OD goes under the seal because then it helps the seal to seal the oil out, okay? Inside of the seal, this is another thing to point out. It goes towards the oil, right? Has got this little steel spring in it. All seals that have springs in them, the spring goes towards the fluid that wants to be retained. So you take the washer with a large OD and you put it into, when you get to that step, we'll be there again in a few minutes. Put it into the fork lower, and then the washer with a larger ID goes on top of that. And then another weird part is this weird springy thing that goes on top of that to hold the seal in. Boom, the weird springy thing goes into this groove right there. Okay? So there's your weird parts. Now, another couple of things you've got of interest are, at the top, of course, you got the spring of the washers, and then you got a flat washer, and then the fork cap. When you're putting it together, make sure you put it together with some race step seal grease. Put that on the seals because then you put it inside the groove of the fork seal and inside the groove right here of the dust seal, because then it makes puts some slippery on this fork tube and the slider action. And as we all know, when it's very slippery, it's very good. Okay, so you need a couple of trick tools to get this together. One of them is you have to be able to hold the damper rod in place where you're tightening up the bolt at the bottom of the fork tube. And what you have to do is you go to a hardware store and get a bolt, number 10 metric bolt, 24 millimeter bolt, and you get a couple of these same lock nuts for it. You get two of them. One is the lock washer, the other is just to go into the 24 millimeter socket. So now you can put the bolt into the damper rod. You can hold it in place when you're putting the bolt in the bottom to hold the whole fork tube together. Okay? The other tool that you need is a bit of 1.5 inch PVC pipe. That's just standard hardware store 1.5 inch pipe. And you're going to use that to put first the bushing in. You put the bushing into the lower fork leg, because it has to be hammered in. It's a tight fit. It's got to be hammered in. And then a couple minutes later, after you put the washer with a large ID on, then you're going to put the seal in with the spring side down. And then you're going to use the 1.5 inch PVC to hammer it in there. And that's, okay. So, there's a couple of interesting things you have to do to put this together. What we're going to do is we're going to take the damper rod with the spring on the bottom of it, and we're going to put it into the fork tube. And then we drop it out the bottom. Boom. Now, we're going to take the 3 little hat-shaped washers and put them on there. And then we take the little funny piece and put that on the end of the damper rod. And then that all goes, see how that fits all in there? Okay, so now, then the next thing to do, is you put the damper rod into the fork lower. There you go. Now you got the damper rod in the fork lower. Now I'm not gonna tighten all this up because I'm showing you how to put it together and got to hold it with a clamp. And then the next thing you do is you put this washer, this is the copper washer that goes in the bottom of the fork tube and seals all the fork oil in there when the bolt is on holding the damper rod together. Now this washer is copper because it's soft and it squishes, and that's how it seals. It conforms to the metal shapes that are there, and then the oil can't get through. Now you can go buy a new one if you want. They sell them at Suzuki dealers as a normal part. Or you can anneal this thing, which means you take a standard propane torch and you heat it up. Heat up this washer until it glows nice and red. Hold on to it with some hemostats or needle nose pliers or something until it gets all nice and red and hot. And then you put it on something to cool off because you want it to cool slowly. We're not quenching it in liquid to harden the outside surface. We don't want to make it hard. You want it to cool slowly so it's nice and soft. And then you put it on the bolt and put the bolt in. And you want to tighten the bolt up. You're going to need a long 10 millimeter Allen wrench here. It's got to be long because, see these marks here? That's because when you put it in, it goes in. It has to go in far enough to where the bolt is to tighten it up. And when I was using the rattle gun to take it out, it rattled around a little bit and got those marks on it. So you need a long 10mm socket to put that bolt in. Okay? And now you've got that the bottom done. Which, in order to do that, of course, you had to take this other tool here and you put that in. So I've got some tape on there to hold the socket and the bolt in, so it's easier to pull it back out. Like, especially if you want to do this while it's on the bike, like if you're using the bike to hold the fork tube in place to give it clamping force, so you can tighten everything up, which is what I'm going to be doing in a while. And then I've got the bolt in the bottom. I've got to pull against gravity. So having the bolt taped to the socket makes it so it will come back out again. So you put it in there, and then you tighten up the bolt. Okay? And you take it out. And now the next thing to do is take the washer, the bushing. Nice bushing. If you've had your bike for a while, this bushing is probably kind of worn. Go get another one. This one has only had about a year on it because I had to replace the fork tube last year because of the same damn rod thing. Anyway, so you put the bushing on there, slide it down in there, take your piece of 1.5" tubing, slide it on in there, and then you go bang, 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 and hammer it in there. I've only got one hand to hold the camera, so I can't show you. But the way I do is I straighten it up on the bench, and wham, wham, wham down into the bench, and then I've got the bushing on there. Okay? And then you put the washer with the small OD on, and then you put the seal with the lip side up, the spring side down on. Put that on, and it takes 2 minutes to put it on there, it's a tight fit. And then you take the piece of 1.5" tubing again and slam the fork seal down in there. Oh, shoot, see this happened. I forgot. You put the fork seal in, and then you put the washer with the large diameter, a large ID on there. Okay? Or it might actually be a good idea to put that on before you hammer this thing in, because now the washer can take the hit instead of the seal. So now you've got it, and then you put the weird springy thing on. Put that into the groove. Okay? And then you drop the emulator in, or if you don't have an emulator, just drop your long spring in. And then the spring goes in, and then the hat-shaped washer, and then the spacer, and then the flat washer, and then the fork cap. And then your RG500 fork is all assembled, and you can go for a ride and have some fun.